said regarding intelligence about whether or not Iran is actively building a nuclear weapon. First, listen to what Director Gabbard testified just this past March on the status of Iran's nuclear program, while noting that it was enriching uranium that could ultimately be used for a nuclear arsenal. And then listen to what the president told me on Air Force One overnight.
The IC continues to assess that Iran is not building a nuclear weapon, and Supreme Leader Khamenei has not authorized the nuclear weapons program that he suspended in 2003.
How close do you personally think that they were to getting one? Because Tulsi Gabbard testified in March that the intelligence community said Iran wasn't building a nuclear weapon.
I don't care what she said. I think they were very close to having it.
Gabbard insisted that she and the president remain on the same page today, but this comes after CNN has confirmed Gabbard was not present at Camp David last weekend when the president convened several members of his national security team to talk about their strategy on Iran if Israel was to strike. Days later, Israel did launch those strikes. My key source tonight is Maggie Haberman, White House correspondent for the New York Times and author of her new paperback, Confidence Man, The Making of Donald Trump and the Breaking of America, that is now out. Maggie, when you see Director Gabbard, I mean, she was quite clear in the testimony to Congress, but it was notable to see how dismissive, I guess is the best way to put it, President Trump was of that analysis from the intelligence community.
Yeah, and Caitlin, Gabbard pointed out that, if you read the fuller statement that she gave, she did say that enrichment levels are at their highest for any non-nuclear state, and the highest levels that they've been, and that is true. What I was struck by, he was publicly dismissive. That just is what it is. But what I was also struck by is he was saying, this is what I think. You asked him about his opinion. He made very clear his opinion. I was struck by that in part because, as my colleagues and I, Jonathan Swan, Mark Mazzetti, and Ronan Bergman, and several others reported today, that contrary to what the Israelis were saying, there was not some new piece of information that appeared to point to some acceleration, at least that the U.S. Intelligence officials were aware of, but that it was clear that Netanyahu was moving ahead with a strike, and so that's where we are.
Yeah, and in that shift, I mean, this is a really deeply reported piece in the Times today that you and your colleagues have put out. It includes, the president having a conversation with a political ally, I believe is what you quoted, where he told them he thought that the prime minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, was trying to drag the United States into another Middle East war. Is that something that, despite this shift, he still seems to be wary of, based on your reporting?
Look, I think he is generally wary of Benjamin Netanyahu. I think that has been the case for a long time. We describe in the piece this is not a relationship that's built on deep trust on either side, and he had said that earlier this year. I think that certainly people around him, a number of them, have been skeptical of that for a while, but I think that President Trump realized this was going to move forward, and I think that Trump and Netanyahu do share a belief that Iran cannot get a nuclear weapon. And, the White House pointed out, and they're not wrong, that Trump has said this over and over again over many years. That's not necessarily the view of everybody in the anti-interventionist wing of the Republican Party. And so I think it's not entirely a surprise that Trump, the one thing I didn't mention, Caitlin, too, is he was getting frustrated with Iran. He believed that he was getting tapped along by Iran, much as he was by Vladimir Putin in these deal discussions. And so it's not entirely surprising that he went this way. The speed of the change is still a bit surprising.
Well, and you're seeing people, as we were just playing that remarkable moment between Tucker Carlson and Senator Ted Cruz over what could happen in Iran. You're seeing this divide in MAGA. And I thought what Vice President J.D. Vance shared today was notable because he was kind of creating space for Trump to have a strike on Iran by the United States. He said, quote, that the president may decide he needs to take further action to end Iranian enrichment. He said a decision ultimately belongs to the president. He said people are right to be worried about foreign entanglement after the last 25 years of idiotic foreign policy. He said, but I believe the president has earned some trust on this issue.
Yeah, I agree with you that I think that he was creating clearly space for people who are hoping there is not going to be a strike to be disappointed, if we're being honest. And J.D. Vance has been quite clear on where he personally is, but he is serving at the president's pleasure. He was on the ticket because the president put him there. And so he is going to do, what the administration wants. But I think that he is trying, as you say, to quell this internecine argument, because it's not quite clear where this is going. I also thought that, this is taking place under, with the backdrop of President Trump saying this weekend that America First is what he thinks it should be, not necessarily a fixed point in the world. And I think you're going to hear more of that going forward.
Maggie Haberman, as always.